Howdy everyone, and welcome to the Serial Geek TV YouTube channel. My name is James Eatock, and today we're going to take a look at the rarely seen introduction sequence to Dungeons and Dragons. The first season of Dungeons and Dragons had an incredibly memorable introduction sequence, one that is pretty much etched into the minds of an entire generation of children. However, unknown to many is the fact that there exists a rarely seen introduction used during the initial broadcast of the series on CBS in 1983. On certain occasions throughout the animation industry of the 80s, deadlines were tight, and so a production would go out the door and maybe not be completely ready. This would even be apparent in the promotion of the series. For example, a few pieces of concept artwork from Marvel Productions wound up being used to promote the series from time to time, most famously in the Saturday Supercade promotional image featuring the rather legendary Richard Pryor. Aside from a few colouring differences, Uni's bright green hair, the most notable thing about these illustrations was not just the colour of Presto's costume, but also the design, with a few more pronounced features. Oh, and also Eric the Cavalier had a horse. So, as I said, deadlines were tight, and sometimes episodes that had recently aired, in this case on CBS, still required a little fine-tuning, like animation retakes for example. Thus, alterations were made at a later date to correct animation errors and instances in which the studio were unhappy with the final production. This ensured that future broadcasts were aired with no problems. In the case of Dungeons and Dragons, it is clear that the introduction was reshot in certain places to conform to the Dungeons and Dragons brand identity, as it was a role-playing game at the same time, and make the last few scenes flow a great deal better. Here I will compare the original introduction with the more familiar reshot introduction. Although the opening visual is the same in both introductions, the way in which they are shot is not. Firstly, the camera is a great deal closer in the original broadcast, as evidenced by the fact that we are unable to see the top of the spinning theme park ride. The camera pans along the scene in one swooping move, past the running child and the line of people waiting, before trucking in towards the ominous looking dragon's face. This is all accomplished with one single camera move. In this version we barely see the children enter the car due to the zoom. In the reshot introduction, the camera pan appears to treat the running child as a focal point, even slowing down as he turns and sprints off towards the line of people. The camera pan then resumes all the way across the scene before coming to a stop and slowly trucking in towards the dragon's face. In this version we see the children enter the car, which hooks up to the next shot. One of the most striking differences is that the original broadcast featured a completely different dragon head, as well as a strikingly different Dungeons and Dragons logo. Even though the quality of the original broadcast image isn't the best, it is obvious that there were a lot less highlights on the dragon's face, as well as the horn-like protrusions illustrated over the side of the mountain. The eyes glow a far deal brighter and more menacingly in the original broadcast, whereas the reshot introduction utilises a much less ominous red glow. As the car enters the dragon's mouth, we see just how different the original broadcast looked. Aside from the previously mentioned lack of highlights, the mouth is a great deal darker inside. Notice the horn-like protrusions extend way beyond the edge of the mountain when compared to the reshot introduction. Also notice that the foreground in the original broadcast is rocklight and desolate, whereas the reshot introduction has a green hill. Of course, the logo is the most interesting change. It is clear that when the introduction sequence was originally shot, they simply created a typical theme park-like logo for Dungeons and Dragons. No doubt once the series began airing, TSR, the owners of the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, requested that the brand logo appear on the ride, prompting the logo alteration as seen in the reshot introduction. This is almost certainly the case, as there is now a large trademark sign next to the re-illustrated logo. After this point, the introduction remains unchanged. Once Uni appears in the close-up shot next to Dungeon Master, we cut back to a wide angle showing the gathered children. In the original broadcast, the wide shot is illustrated with great detail, showing the characters listening intently to Dungeon Master. Dungeon Master is animated to point to the skies just as the image crossfades to a shot of the group from afar, revealing their desolate surroundings. The reshot introduction is actually a close-up of the shot from afar and simply zooms back at a great deal of speed, hence why Dungeon Master is already pointing to the skies. The scene of Dungeon Master and the children then crossfades to an ornately sculpted dragon head breathing beautifully animated fire. In the original, both the flames and the dragon head descend into shot during the crossfade. Whereas in the reshot introduction, the dragon head is in the centre of the screen right from the beginning, making for a much easier visual to digest. In the original broadcast, the shot is a great deal shorter, unlike the reshot introduction, which holds the gorgeous visual a little longer. The flames turn to smoke, and the way in which the smoke begins to form before filling the screen and disappearing is the same in both versions. However, in the original broadcast version, the Dungeons and Dragons logo is revealed not with the use of smoke, but rather with the use of a forced circular video crossfade effect. The effect is rather jarring and strange, as the entire introduction sequence up until this point had not required one single video effect. Due to this, the Dungeons and Dragons logo is revealed sooner in the original broadcast version than in the reshot version. The reshot introduction has the logo seen for the first time once the smoke has disappeared and looks a great deal more natural than a video effect. Once the logo is revealed, we can see immediately that there is a vast difference between the two. The original broadcast logo was used in some of the earliest promotion material relating to the show. The logo itself is rendered with a cinder-like texture, and one would surmise the wall behind the logo is there to represent the dungeon aspect of the title. The reshot introduction places the logo against a rock face and incorporates the official logo used by TSR. As I mentioned earlier in this video, no doubt the changes were made to better reflect the Dungeons and Dragons brand identity. Personally, I prefer the original broadcast logo because I feel that it is easier to read and is more striking in its appearance. When Marvel Productions created a fantastic new introduction for the show's second season, they sensibly revised the logo so that it stood out from the background far better than what we saw throughout the first season. When I was working on the Dungeons and Dragons DVD set for BCI, I provided them with all the introduction sequences that I had, including the first CBS one. I had picked up all of the original CBS airings in a tape trade back in the mid to late 90s. I no longer have those VHS tapes. Goodness knows why. Sadly, when the series was digitised in the mid to late 90s, the Season 1 introduction was placed onto every episode of the series. So not only did we lose this early version of the introduction sequence, we also lost all the episode teasers and the correct season-specific end credits. And we also, infamously, lost one other very noteworthy thing. The second season introduction, which was unique in the way that it introduced the cast members as a group who had grown rather accustomed to their fantastical surroundings. That introduction also had the wonderful closing dialogue with Peter Cullen as Venger declaring, "There is no escape from the realm of Dungeons and Dragons." And because it's so damn good, let's watch that second season introduction together.
Come on, everybody!
The Dungeons and Dragons ride! Wow, neat!
Give me a break.
What's happening? Oh no!
No sweat. Back off! Young pupils, this way! The Dungeon Master, help!
There is no escape from the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
Whether or not we'll ever see those introduction sequences restored is doubtful. Sadly, these days corporations don't appear to be interested in preserving the material that came before, only making money from the intellectual properties that they own, which from a business standpoint makes all the sense in the world, but in the long run is highly detrimental. But that's a video for another time. But let's not end this video on a completely sour note. Let's take a look at Bob Kline's gorgeous storyboards for that second season introduction, because each and every one of those panels is utterly gorgeous. Enjoy. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe.